Hello and good evening from Tel Aviv. My name is Yael Patir and I'm J Street's Israel Director. And with me today is Ayalon, who will be our speaker. Thank you very much for joining us. And welcome everybody to another JStream webinar focusing on the issue of annexation. I don't know if you had a chance to be with us in the other conversations that we had, but I assure you that we're going to cover a lot of territory this evening or your noon. So we're going to get started. Let me just share with you that there is a Q&A button at the bottom of the screen, which you can use to send us your questions, and I will do my best to ask all of them. And also I encourage you to follow JStream, which has a lot of information about our webinars. And I also encourage you to take part in our Stop Annexation campaign and be part of the collective effort to stop this disastrous move. So we come together today with two pieces of news that were published in regards to annexation. One is an interview by US Ambassador David Friedman this morning in Israel Hayom, which I think will fully be available in English this weekend, where he says, and I quote, "It's not the US that is declaring sovereignty, but the Israeli governments. Once it does, the US is ready to recognize it. As we know, the Israeli government, shall it be formed according to the coalition agreement that was signed, has the green light. The sides agreed that come July 1st, the government can bring forward proposals for annexation, which the Israeli right coins as sovereignty. That's the term they are using to make it look as a positive thing. And I want to highlight to you that, as you see, the US ambassador has adopted the language of the Israeli right in this interview and in many other interviews. The other piece of news that came out today was a JTA piece about, which is based on an interview or a review of Vice President Biden's positions on the Middle East, in which he says, and I quote, "A priority now for the cause of Israeli-Palestinian peace should be resuming our dialogue with the Palestinians and pressing Israel not to take actions that make a two-state solution impossible." And I also recommend looking for that piece. It's also available in all the different media outlets that J Street is using. Another thing that is happening in Israel today is the continuation of perhaps, or we're not sure, the last knots being tied in order to form a coalition. And it's after several days that we, as a public in Israel, had the opportunity to witness the proceedings in the Supreme Court around a number of appeals against the coalition agreement. So that is the context to our conversation today. Let me just introduce Admiral Ayalon, who's a former director of the Israel Security Agency, the Shin Bet, and a former commander of Israel's Navy. He also had a political career and was a cabinet minister and member of Knesset. As an activist, he is very known for leading together with Professor Sari Nusseibeh, the Palestinian president, or used to be a president of Al-Quds University, the People's Voice Peace Initiative in 2002. He's one of the founders of an organization called Blue and White Future, not to be not a party. and really there's so many titles, Ami, that you have, but I want to, he's a member of the Israel Democracy Institute. I want to actually highlight your position as chairman of Akim Israel, which is the National Association of Habilitation of Children and Adults. So with intellectual disabilities, I should say. So you see that, and I did not mention your university affiliation, but really it's the breadth of your activity is absolutely phenomenal. And I want to open, if you don't mind, with a story. As the J Street director in Israel, when J Street was fighting to get the Iran deal passed, I went to several generals in Israel and asked them what they think about the deal before it was finalized and after it was finalized. And all of the people I went to were positive about the deal, all of them, including former heads of IDF and so on, and said, a deal is better than a non-deal, and we should support it. It was also eventually we learned in line with the position of our security establishment, but nobody wanted to speak out, and nobody wanted to be on record. And there was only one person in Israel called Ami Ayalon, who provided an interview and was the first one to basically say that exact simple message in a way, but that demanded a lot of courage at the time and leadership. And after he was out, there was a pouring of other generals that felt comfortable to say so. So I'm sharing the story because you've always been leading the way for many of us, and I want to really thank you for that, and congratulate you on all of your achievements, and for being, at the head of the road leading for Israeli-Palestinian peace, which hopefully we'll get to see in our lifetime. So I would like to open today with asking you, actually, before we go towards annexation, let's talk about this moment and the formation of the government. You are one of 122 citizens that signed an appeal to the Supreme Court against this coalition agreement. Can you give us an update about where the Supreme Court is at with these proceedings, and how would that affect the formation of the government?
Well, thank you, Yael, for the presentation, and I'm sure that everybody who heard it noticed that, first of all, there is a huge difference between generals and admirals. You said you approached many generals, but you approached only one admiral. So, okay. And second, it is clear that everybody who speaks so openly, as I did, is by definition a lousy politician. So thank you very much for this presentation. It was a kind of a hidden agenda, and I wanted to make sure that everybody understood it. As for your question, yes, I was one of the 127 people who appealed to the Supreme Court, and in a way, this was our fourth appeal. We appealed again and again and again for the last 5 months. As you know, we have been experiencing elections again and again and again. So every time before the election, we appealed for one issue. We asked the court to declare or to say that a person who was accused and now is sitting in the court trying to defend himself is not capable to create a coalition and to become the Prime Minister of Israel. And we thought that it is more than obvious that people who goes to elect our people or our members to the Knesset should know in front before whether the one that they voted for will be eligible to create the coalition. And the Supreme Court decided that it was too early. Finally, 2 days ago, they decided after the third election to discuss it. And during the last these 2 days, they discussed two main topics. First of all, the idea whether a parliament member, a Knesset member, who is defending himself in the court is capable to create a coalition. This was probably the major issue. And they did not publish the ruling, but the notion is that they are not going to touch it. And the second issue was the coalition agreement. In order to create this optional or possible coalition between Likud and Blue and White, they had to change at least 3 or 4 basic laws, which in Israel is our kind of constitution. And they had about 3 or 4 days to do it. So, and we thought that it is unconstitutional, and the deal itself, the agreement between Blue and White and Likud, should not be approved. As it seems now, they sent, this is the way, by the way, that the court is sending a message to the parliament, to the Knesset. And as a result of this debate, several issues was changed already. And finally, the court decided that beyond the messages that they sent, they are not going to interfere, and they will wait to see the laws after the laws will be approved in the Knesset, and then to decide whether to approve these laws or not. This is, in a way, the bottom line. Just to add that I was not surprised. I have a very long, a long experience with Supreme Court decisions, and in a way, if we should go back into our history, we, the Jewish people, we created a very, very unique model of government. About 3,600 years ago, we created the notion of separations of power, what you call in America checks and balances, where the main tension is between the prophet and later the king. Now, if you read, and I'm sure that all of you read all the stories of the Bible, during several hundreds of years, when Israel, when we had our kingdom in Israel, all the time there was a tension. And this is, in a way, the core of the stories, the tension between the prophet and the king. Now, when we created the state, the new state of Israel, and we signed our Declaration of Independence, we sent our judges to the values, not of the kings, and not of the priests, and not of the people of Israel. We sent them to the values of our prophets. Now, in a way, we expect our judges, when they discuss these constitutional issues, to become prophets. And unfortunately, the way we understand, our judges are not prophets. So they take all the moral issues, they do not discuss it, and they go into the details of the law, And in a way, this is the result that we get tonight, today.
Thank you, Ami. Let's move to the government and its impact on annexation. So we have a question that I think will help us move from the question of a government being formed, and again, we don't know until we know, but it seems to be moving forward. So the question is, this unity government with Benny Gantz and Blue and White, what impact will it have on annexation or the prospects for negotiations between Israelis and Palestinians? And let me just add to that question. In a previous conversation in preparation to this call, you told me that there's a majority, that the majority of the Israeli security establishment is against annexation. The leaders of Blue and White are two ex-chief of staffs of the IDF. So we have always assumed that they are also against annexation. What does it mean when they enter a government that has in one of its clause the issue of annexation?
Well, it's a very complicated question. First of all, I remind myself that you promised to try to ask all the questions that will be asked during the, I don't know, the next 40 minutes. I do not promise to give all the answers. And not only because we don't have time, I'm not sure that I have all the answers. And I want to be very honest. I know Benny Gantz and I know Ashkenazi personally. I was very close to Ashkenazi when I was in the Navy and later in the Shin Bet. And I met Benny Gantz several times. I do not assume, I know exactly that they were totally against unilateral annexation, not only when I met them when I was in the Navy and then later when I was in the Shin Bet and later when I was politics. I know it for sure even when I met them 6 months ago. But what will be their decision? I have no idea. And I'm not here in order to, I'm not a very good political analyst. And usually I used to say that psychology department in our family belongs to my wife. So psychology is not my department. But the way I understand them, they came to believe yes, they came to believe that they are saving us. And since we are in a time of crisis, I can understand when it started. You have to understand that what we have been experiencing, we Israelis, the Israeli society, the Israeli democracy, the Israeli economy for the last 12 months is something that we never experienced. On top of it, we are facing the coronavirus, which is a major pandemic and in a way paralyze our society and our economy. So I believe that they came to believe, they convinced themselves that they are saving us because we should not and cannot experience a fourth round of elections. And the question is, what is the price? Of course, I'm totally against it, but I'm trying to understand what they thought about it. Now, in order to create this kind of agreement and to be partners for Netanyahu, and you have to understand, nobody believes even to one word of what he says, and you can quote me. By the way, there was a poll, I think was published yesterday, among Israelis between 55 to 60% of the Israelis do not believe to Netanyahu to what he promised, and they do not believe that he will keep his promise to Benny Gantz to be replaced after 18 months. So in order to create this kind of coalition that demands some trust, they have to pay a huge price. And since for Netanyahu, the unilateral annexation is something that, by the way, even Netanyahu himself was totally against unilateral annexation up to, I don't know, 12 months ago. But politically, he needed it in order to survive in politics. So they signed an agreement in which they are not allowed to leave the coalition and to lead us to elections on this issue. They will have to follow the coalition decision, so they will not be able to give their people the free choice as parliament members. But in the subtext, they are sending us a message which nobody can understand, but they say, well, we shall annex depend on the stability of the peace with Egypt and with Jordan, and under security considerations, etc., etc. So there is an exit, a very narrow exit for this. And I'm saying it because it is very, 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 very important. Finally, if we should jump to the conclusion, it is obvious that today in the Knesset today, the majority of the members will vote for unilateral annexation. The question is, what will be the level of opposition in Jordan, in Egypt, and what will be the debate between Democrats to Republicans in America? It is an election year. I think that it will create a major impact on the decision of our government and of our people, whether to approve it or not.
Thank you. I'll circle back to that point about the US role and how it affects the relationship. But I want you to, if you may, take just a couple of minutes to explain to us why is it that you said to me that the majority of the Israeli security establishment is against annexation, and what do they see in annexation, which probably also includes one of the questions that we got from our viewers, is how will annexation, if advanced, create additional strains on the IDF? What will be the impact?
Okay. There are several aspects to, again, I emphasize a unilateral annexation. The unilateral issue is a major issue. First of all, it will totally erase our identity as a Jewish democratic state with the spirit of our Declaration of Independence. We will not be majority, so Israel will be either apartheid or we lose its Jewish culture and flavor. Second, there is a moral issue and a legal issue. I'm not going to discuss it because I understand that Michael Sfard discussed it and the whole legal and moral issues, and it is obvious is against international law and against all human rights aspects. What we are discussing in commanders in Israel, and in many other communities that belong to the security community of Israel is the security aspect of this action. I want to make it very, very clear. When we speak on partial annexation, by the way, all the politicians who are speaking about it are giving the notion that it will be only a partial annexation, Jordan Valley for security considerations, or only the Jewish Israeli settlements within the West Bank, or parts of territories that today is under Israeli security responsibility, which we call sea area. All these actions, or each of them, will create what we call a domino effect. It is something that we know how it starts. No one can tell us how and when it will end. But it is more than clear for us that know something about Palestinians, understand the geography. By the way, I want to remind you something that I'm not sure that you know. Today, 75% of the Palestinian people came to believe that only by violent intifada they will see the end of occupation. So if during the 90s they used to believe in diplomacy, after the second intifada they came to believe that Israel has no intention to leave the territory, and Israel is just trying to gain time in order to come later and to tell them, listen, we wanted to create a reality of two states, but it's too bloody late. So with this atmosphere, it is obvious that once Palestinians will see unilateral annexation, immediately we shall see a dramatic decrease in the level of security cooperation, which today is one of the cornerstones of our security against terror in the West Bank and in Israel itself. Second, we cannot assume that the Palestinian Authority will remain as a formal administration, because even today most Palestinians see the Palestinian president, Abu Mazen, as an Israeli collaborator. In the streets, and we see it in all the polls of Khalil Shkaki, they used to say he is defending Israelis against Hamas, but he is not defending us against settlers and the soldiers of the IDF. So they see him as an Israeli collaborator. And once he will lose even the formal promise of bringing them the end of occupation, he will not be able for the long run to stay in power. So we shall see as a result increase in the level of violence and terror. It will start somewhere in the West Bank, along the roads and in the settlements, but later we shall see it more and more in Israel itself and in our cities. We saw it during the Second Intifada. We saw it 4 or 5 years ago in Jerusalem. We see it from time to time. We have to assume that this will be the new realities that we shall face. In addition, the Jordanian king will have to reassess the peace with Israel. By the way, he said it several months ago. We have to understand that a major portion of his citizens in Jordan are Palestinians. For them is a major issue. And again, we cannot assume that the peace process in Egypt will be maintained, and probably something similar we shall see in Egypt. They will have to reassess all the relations with Israel. Now, in Israel, by the way, I believe that in America as well, we are always doing a mistake because we measure the relations with our neighbors, states, by the formal relations that we have with administrations, whether with the princes, kings, or prime ministers. It's a huge mistake when it comes to the Middle East. In the Middle East, especially after what we used to call the Arab Spring 2011, that became sooner than later the Arab Winter, what we see today is a major shift in political power. And what we see is decrease in the political power of all the administrations, even administration that stayed in power, presidents, kings, in Jordan, in Egypt, in Saudi Arabia, and a major part of the political power is in the hand of the people in the street. Now, the people in the street doesn't know what to do with it, but they are sending a message. Now, even not in democracies, they need legitimacy. It is not a mistake that the Jordanian king and the Saudi king or prince, and not even the Egyptian president, it is not a mistake that they did not visit for the last 10 years Israel. It is only because the people in the street, in Amman, in Riyadh, and in Cairo, will not let them unless they will show progress on the Israeli-Palestinian track.
Let me ask you, oh, sorry.
Yes, just to finish it, what we shall do, we are empowering all the radical forces in the Middle East, whether it is in the streets, in Egypt, Jordan, Saudi Arabia, but more, we are giving a lot of power to Iran and Turkey that all the time are saying, listen, Israel is telling you lies. They have no intention to sign agreement with the Palestinians.
So I want to ask you a direct question that we got for one of our viewers to summarize maybe the security implications. One of our viewers is asking about the Jordan Valley. And basically, do you still think it's essential for Israel's security that we hold on to the Jordan Valley?
Yeah, the Jordan Valley, first of all, yes. But we have to understand the war of today is totally different from the wars that we saw during the 20th century. In the war of today, the major threat are the people, and the way to see it is by the level of terror, and with the technology of missiles and cyber, the idea is not tanks crossing the Jordan or the Suez Canal. It is totally different kind of war. Now, I believe that we have to make sure that we shall control the Jordan Valley unless or until we shall have an agreement. So the idea of unilaterally pulling out all the Israeli forces the way we did in Gaza, we are not going to do it. It will empower radicalism, and it will empower Hamas, and we shall see exactly what we saw in Gaza. So this is why the idea is to coordinate, to cooperate. Now, the question is whether we have to control the Jordan Valley. The question is until we shall have an agreement and until we shall see that our security is foolproof, or we are not going to take any risk when it comes to security, whether it will be by what the Palestinians will do, what the international community will do. By the way, there are many examples. When we pulled out our forces from Sinai, the international community took over. And we still saw, until not many years ago, international forces along the border with Egypt. And it is a possible, I think that it is a scenario in which we can see it in the future with our Palestinian neighbors. But for the long run, we have to create a reality in which, and it is, we have the technical capability to know exactly what is happening in every square meter along the border, even if our soldiers are not sitting there, and international forces, whether it will be UN, America, Europe, or even Egypt or other states. We shall know exactly what is happening there, and in the long run, we should not control the Jordan Valley with our soldiers.
Thank you. That was extremely informative and helpful. I want to manage to get two more questions, moving away from the security analysis, and to the Israeli-US relationship, which is, as we know, a very important pillar of Israeli security. And our viewers are asking, and I'll merge their questions together. And then after that questions, I will want to ask another question and move to the Israeli public. So about the US-Israel relationship, how do you see the current US administration influencing the topic? If there's annexation and then we have a Biden administration, how does that look like? Does he have the power to roll it back? Going back to the Trump administration, today we heard that Secretary of State Pompeo is going to visit the region. Since then, there has been reports that maybe it's not accurate, but it's reported that he's coming as part of this Israeli-Palestinian committee that is reviewing the peace plan and the maps. How do you think that visit comes in the context of promotion of annexation?
Look, I should be very careful about discussing the American strategy or American administration, not only because I'm an Israeli and I didn't vote for this administration, or I don't have the right to vote in America, By the way, in the past, I used to say that it's not fair. The American president shaped our daily life, and in Israel, by the way, and we do not have the right to vote, but okay, this is life, it's not a picnic, and we have to live with it. But I'm saying it because it was very clear from what I said, and I don't hide my views, that I'm totally against unilateral actions. And I think that unless we shall create step by step, probably the level of confidence between us and Palestinians is so low that we cannot see it happening immediately. But all what we do, we have to think every day on the impact of the Palestinian side. Because finally, we are not leaving this region. We came here in order to stay. And whether we like it or not, Palestinians are not going to leave this region. And between the Jordan to the sea, we are not majority. So we have only two options to understand that we have to divide this precious piece of land for two people and to keep our identity and to do our best in order to create relations with our neighbors, or to accept the idea, which I personally totally against, to understand that the whole idea of a Jewish state is irrelevant and it will be a democracy for the two people, which I totally against, because I believe that we have the right of a state of our own, in which we shall speak our language, we shall celebrate our holidays, and we shall tell our children our narratives, which are totally contradicting to the Palestinian narrative. So every administration or every policy that contradicts this view, I cannot support.
So being sensitive to your comment about not thinking that it's your right to advise the U.S. administration, but still wanting to push you, I'm actually going to throw a controversial question, and as you said, you decide if you give the answers or not. The question that one of our viewers is asking is, what do you think about the proposal of leveraging the security aid to Israel from the United States, meaning to use it as a response for annexation or as a stick? Do you think that it could endanger Israeli security if an American administration were to go through with it?
Well, I'm against it. I'm against it not because you don't have the right to do it. You know, it's your money, and if America believes that that it is not for I don't know that it does not goes along with the American interests. So who am I to tell you that you are wrong? But it will not improve or it will not create a better environment in order to create a negotiated agreement. The way I understand us Israelis, we are, I don't know, sometimes stubborn people, and the reaction will be probably the opposite. It reminds me, by the way, if I have a minute, I'm a formal trainer of marine mammals. It took me about 6 months to get this certificate, and I had to study science psychology. Marine mammals are very clever animals, dolphins and sea lions. I'm saying it because the first thing that we understood that if you want a marine mammal to behave in a certain way, you have to give him a fish and not to hit him. Now, I believe that it is not the same. It is the same with children and with adults and with people. So I don't think that to send us a threat or to punish us. But I believe, and by the way, we published it in our website in Future Blue and White, our political plan. And in a way, we are not using the idea of unilateral, but yes, we are saying there are many actions that we Israelis can do in order to create confidence. For example, we gave at least 2 examples. We can say that even if we cannot start to negotiate because there is no Palestinian partner, by the way, I believe that there is, but okay, I'm not the prime minister. If the prime minister will say, okay, we believe in 2 states for 2 people, and we understand that in the future, the border will not be east of the security fence. So we do not freeze, we stop building any building east of the security fence. And in addition, we pass the law of bringing back all these settlers who wish to return. Because once we say that it will not be part of Israel, and we do not have sovereignty claims east of the fence. So America can support it, and America can say, by the way, if America tomorrow will say, okay, we moved our embassy to Jerusalem, it's great. I'm not against it, by the way. But since if in the future, Jerusalem will be the capital of Israel, and somewhere in East Jerusalem, it will be the capital of Palestine. So we recognize the state of Palestine immediately, America. By the way, I believe that we should do it as well, Israel. But again, I'm not the prime minister, but if your prime minister will say, we recognize the state of Palestine, and we shall build our embassy in Palestine, in Jerusalem, and we ask Palestinians and Israelis to negotiate on the route of the borders based on international resolutions 242, 338, and the Arab Peace Initiative. I think this is something that Obama could do, and I think that this is something that every American president can do, and it will create a huge impact on Israelis and on Palestinians.
Thank you. So we had a bunch of questions, which I think you just answered, about the future of the 2-state solution possibly post annexation. There's a lot of questions that are already asking about the day after, as you've noticed. And I think you just gave us a lot of examples of a lot of things that are still all relevant, also post annexation. And I'll take the liberty, since I know your position, of saying that you do not think that the 2-state solution is is always a goal that if we want to achieve is achievable, and is sort of the basic of the future of Israel as we see it, to achieve it. So it's not there's no really an option for seeing it no longer being available as a solution.
No, I'm even more optimistic. Look, I'm 75 years old already. Okay, I can tell you that I believe that we can see it in my lifetime, not in your lifetime. You are very young. In my lifetime, we can see it.
Thank you for that comment. I am celebrating my birthday and entering a new era, so it's good to feel still young. So closing, we have 5 minutes to close, and I want to ask you a combined question. Do you see the Israeli public being mobilized on annexation? Is it happening now? Will we see it happening? And how do you see the international community helping in the fight against annexation? So if you can, in 5 minutes, give us the your top points.
As for the Israeli public, I'm not too optimistic, but it depends on the reality on the ground. In recent polls, we see that the Israeli-Palestinian issue for the Israelis is not an issue. And what Israelis do care is the two major issues, is security and economy. Especially now, unemployment in Israel is, 25, 27%, which is unthinkable, but nobody knows what will happen in the next 6 months, when annexation will be a relevant issue. But let me tell you something which is very sad. We see a correlation between the security reality and the support of the public in two states. The higher is the level of terror, the higher is the support for two states, which is like a paradox. But 4 years ago, when we had, a minor beginning of what we thought might be developed to a third intifada, it was the first time ever since 48 that the majority of Jews in Israel, only Jews in Israel, were ready to give back all the Arab neighborhoods in Jerusalem to whoever will be ready to take them. And by the way, we saw it during the second intifada. When my friend, Professor Nusayba, and myself, we got more than 450,000 signatures from Israelis and Palestinians supporting this vision of two states. So if, and it will not happen in 6 months, but if the security reality, if terror will increase, unfortunately, the reaction will be greater support to two-state solution. And since I don't pray, I don't want terror to be increase. So I would say that today the decision of Netanyahu will depend on the reaction of the Jordanian king and the public in Jordan, the Egyptian president and the public in the street of Cairo, and what he will understand from the voices from America. Now, just to finish with America, I know it's no surprise. Around the president, the American president, there are two parties. Parties that until now shaped the policy. They were surprised by the reaction of the Arab states and the Arab League. And since they were surprised, they hold more than they intended the permission to Israel to go forward. And the other side is, of course, the American ambassador in Israel, which is totally accepting and even pushing. He's the representative, he's a greater, he represents the settlement movement or the settlers in Israel. And he is in a way pushing to unilateral annexation immediately. Now, the question is what will happen in the next 3-4 months around the American president? And second, what will be the reaction of the American public? As it seems in the voices of the candidates, in this case, the Democratic candidate and the American president.
And that is where J Street comes in to the picture. Let me thank you very much, Admiral, for this very clear view, which I think is so helpful for all of us. To also say that, excuse me, there's an article that you are signed on in the foreign policy, which really outlines all the implications as you see them for annexation, and it's co-signed by the former head of Mossad, Tamir Pardo, and the head of the former head of the Central Command. So to encourage people to read that and also, I mean, follow your writing on various issues. Let me just close by sharing with our audience that we at J Street are not shy of, you know, taking a front seat on the fight against annexation. We're in the midst as all of us, of adapting to a global pandemic and economic uncertainty. And in order to do our job well, as we know how to do it, we need your support. So please consider helping J Street fight against annexation by giving at jstreet.org/donate. Thank you very much, Admiral. I hope to be able to host you again and have a good day. All of our viewers, stay safe and healthy.
Okay, thank you very much.